Hi and welcome back. Good choice of viewers that you've decided to deep dive into SAP Cloud Platform business rules. Let me introduce myself once again and let's get us started. My name is Tobias Steckenborn. I'm an SAP business process consultant, so I'm currently working with SAP and I'm doing these Udemy courses on the side. I'm usually working within the energy or utilities industry, but I've been working with manufacturing and other customers as well. What are we going to talk about during this course? Let's take a look into the course material for a second. We are going to talk about multiple things. We'll start with an introduction. Basically this current topic. Who am I? What are we going to do? Afterwards, we'll take a look into the context of SAP Cloud Platform business rules. So we'll speak about the SAP Cloud Platform, about the two different pillars of the SAP Cloud Platform, and where SAP Cloud Platform business rules fits into it. Afterwards, we'll talk about the theory of SAP Cloud Platform business rules. So we'll talk about the enterprise rule model, we'll talk about the different entities and concepts, and we'll talk, for example, about the versioning of SAP Cloud Platform business rules. Then we'll take the next step. We'll walk through the SAP Cloud Platform business rules project creation with an SAP Cloud Platform trial account. Then we'll try and test everything with the SAP API Business Hub. As this is just a quick start guide, we won't be able to look into everything. So to conclude the course, I will take you through an outlook. What else is out there that you could do with SAP Cloud Platform business rules? And where might you find some information? All right, let's get into it. To get started, we should talk about the context of the SAP Cloud Platform business rules. Where in the SAP Cloud Platform do business rules fit in? Where do they belong to? If you're thinking about the SAP Cloud Platform, you should think about an integration extension platform built for intelligent enterprises. It enables you to connect your landscape and create application extensions that focus on your business needs. So speaking about SAP Cloud Platform, we usually speak about two different pillars, the integration suite and the extension suite. The integration suite is responsible or is used to connect and customize experiences. So for example, if you want to connect a Cloud for Customer system with an S/4HANA system, you would use pieces of the integration suite. An example would be Cloud Platform integration. So it's used to accelerate innovations by starting with an integration. On the other side, you've got the extension suite. The extension suite is basically building up on what you get delivered from SAP. So the contents of the extension suite should enable you to deliver engaging digital experiences across all applications and channels. They should help you to automate and enhance and adapt business processes with flexibility, and they should help you to develop and manage extensions across any landscape. Underlying both of these pillars, there's the multi-cloud experience. So all of it is running on data centers from Amazon, from Alibaba, from Microsoft, or from Google. So as you've maybe noticed, the extension suite is the fitting place for process visibility. So let's take a deeper dive into the extension suite. So what's the SAP Cloud Platform extension suite? The SAP Cloud Platform extension suite can be explained quite simply. It's a suite that offers you capabilities and services to simplify application development and extensions. So it should help you to realize quick value with lower risks. There are three different areas in the extension suite. The first area is development efficiency. Development efficiency is all about accelerating development projects, reducing time to market, increasing developer productivity with tools and services tailored for cloud development projects, and ensuring enterprise qualities. There are different services belonging to this area. For example, the new Web IDE or the new integrated development environment of the SAP Cloud Platform, the Business Application Studio, the different low-code or no-code tools, the runtime environments such as Cloud Foundry, Kima, Functions as a Service, or the DevOps tools such as the CI/CD service. Then there's a second pillar, which is digital experience. Digital experience is all about increasing people productivity and engagement through harmonized digital experiences. So it's all about reducing learning curves for the different users, to have one single access point to the different systems, or to increase the productivity of users in another way. The services belonging to that area are, for example, the Fiori Launchpad or the new Work Zone, the different mobile applications such as mobile cards, or the chatbot SAP Conversation AI. And there's a third and last area, which is all about digital process automation. This area aims at achieving business results faster and freeing up your workforce for value-adding tasks. So it's all about process digitalization, task automation, driving engagement, and getting visibility onto your processes. Services belonging to this area are, for example, the SAP Cloud Platform workflow management, the intelligent robotic process automation, the different shipped live process contents, or process mining from Celonis. So as you've maybe guessed, digital process automation is the area SAP Cloud Platform business rules belong to. Let's take a deep dive into this one. So the digital process automation, as I said, is all about tailoring digital workflows to your business needs. It's all about getting you to automate repetitive tasks and doing this in a flexible and customizable way. So it's basically about process automation, as the topic says. Now, within this digital process automation, there are multiple services. When we're talking about SAP Cloud Platform business rules, we're talking about workflow management. All of these 4 different pillars once had different licenses. Now they are below this workflow management license, and it's basically workflows, which is SAP Cloud Platform workflow. There you can model different workflows with the BPMN standard and deploy them to the SAP Cloud Platform. They can then be consumed by the My Inbox, which I think is now renamed to Task Center. So you've got one central place for all your workflow tasks or user tasks. Then we've got the area of decisions. Decisions is really SAP Cloud Platform business rules, where you're basically managing enterprise-wide rules and vocabulary. And then you've got the process visibility, which is showing you the KPIs or the current live process status of the different workflows. SAP Cloud Platform business rules is all about flexibility to adapt to new requirements. So it's about tailoring business processes to the business needs and supporting new business model innovations through the change of decision logic. If you're reading the slides, it's talking about high change decision logic. Why is it that way? Because it doesn't make much sense to implement the business rule service into an application if there are just changes once a year or once every 2 years. It's about digitizing and automating the decision making. So you've got standardized tables with the different outcomes depending on the inputs. And it's about enabling centralized decision management. So you can't just use the SAP Cloud Platform business rules to use them in the cloud platform, but you can also use them with an S/4HANA system or with a SAP HANA system. So it's about centralized decision management as well. So talking about business rules, we're talking about a simplified management of decision logic across SAP solutions. It's all about agility, reusability, and transparency. Your business users should be able to change rules on their own without the need of different developers in between. The different rules and vocabularies should be reusable so that you always have the same outcome with the same input. And everybody should know or should be able to know which kind of rules are active, which kind of rules are being used. So with the SAP Cloud Platform business rules, you can automate decision logic with some web-based tools. So you've got a software as a service application that's delivered, which you can use to configure, author, and release business rules. But also you can implement the SAP Cloud Platform business rules with a UI5 control into your own application. So you could build your own application consuming the SAP Cloud Platform business rules and using them. Then there's this enterprise rule model, which is for central decision management. So you can currently model the business rules on the cloud platform and then deploy them to one of three systems, which is either an S/4HANA system, so an ABAP runtime, to a HANA system, so a HANA runtime, or to the SAP Cloud Platform. All of these authoring processes, as well as the consumption of business rules, can be done via open APIs. We'll take a look into that at the end of the course, but basically what you should know is that you don't even need to use the user interfaces. If you're really a hardcore developer, you could build your very own decision user interface and just use the business rules service as the underlying logic engine. SAP Cloud Platform Business Rules is there to empower your users to manage business logic independently from application development. So it's all about giving business users the power to change the outcome of your processes on their own without other developers or consultants being in between. So it's about reducing cost for your business department. It's about centrally building and managing your decision logic across different solutions and landscapes. So that's this SAP Enterprise Rule Model based on the Decision Model and Notation 1.1, which can be deployed to SAP Cloud Platform, SAP HANA, or SAP S/4HANA, which is once again reducing complexity, reducing the different modeling places, and therefore saving costs, or at least giving you a more consistent modeling experience. And it's about ease of developer use with having open APIs. So basically you can do everything that you can do in the application, also just via APIs. There are APIs for authoring rules, so modeling rule projects, modeling rule services, modeling rules themselves. And there are a set of APIs to consume and invoke the rules that you have deployed. So you could use SAP Cloud Platform Business Rules from everywhere where you're able to call REST services. An example that's usually used is SAP Cloud Platform Workflow. If we're taking a look into the environment that SAP Cloud Platform Business Rules is used in, you'll see a lot of what I've just talked about. You've got the possibility to directly deploy to SAP S/4HANA or SAP HANA. Doing that requires the SAP gateway in between, so you need to have an OData service available for the SAP S/4HANA system, and then it'll be modeled in the BIF Plus framework. On the SAP HANA system, you'll need to have the business rules connector activated, and then it will be modeled with the HANA rules framework. Then you can see some of the business rules being embedded into different solutions. So you won't have your own business rules service behind that, but these solutions are using the business rules under the hood. An example would be SAP Cloud Master Data Governance or some C4HANA solutions. You can use the business rules to extend also other applications by using the REST services. For example, Qualtrics, for example, Ariba, for example, Concur. Now, when we're speaking about this kind of direct deployment, we're speaking about this common enterprise rules model. So you've got one central place for authoring your rules, for maintaining your rules, and to version your rules. If we're talking about the embedded use case, we're really talking about this kind of embeddable SAP UI5 rule control. So there is a predefined rule control that you can also use in your application. So the customers of your application wouldn't be thrown out of their current user experience, but you would just embed that UI5 control, and you can manage the lifecycle of rules directly from your application as well. Then you've got some more stuff which is running on the SAP Cloud Platform. So for example, the text service or the time processing service, as well as, it's wrong on this slide, but the SAP Global Track and Trace, the SAP Cloud Platform Identity and Governance are, for example, using business rules. Speaking from my area, SAP Utilities is also planning on heavily using the SAP Cloud Platform Workflow Management. In the middle, you're seeing integrates with. What does that mean? Well, there is no direct integration to, for example, SAP Conversation AI, but you can use it as some kind of context engine, for example, for SAP Conversation AI. So you can use the rules as an engine to make decisions in your chatbot or in your robotic process automation, or for example in workflows. Underlying all of this is the SAP multi-cloud strategy. So the business rules service is not running on SAP data centers, but depending on your choice, on Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Alibaba Cloud, and there are more hyperscalers to come. All right, that much for the context. I hope with this information you know enough about the context to decide where the SAP Cloud Platform business rules are fitting in. Now that you've learned about the context of SAP Cloud Platform business rules, let's take a look into the theory. So during this section, you'll learn about the SAP Enterprise Rule Model. You'll learn about the different concepts of SAP Cloud Platform business rules, and you'll learn about the necessary steps to create your own business rule project. So what is the Enterprise Rule Model? The Enterprise Rule Model is quite simply a model for the definition and exchange of business rules. It doesn't really matter where these rules are executed. So it could be in the HANA Rules Framework, it could be in BIF Plus, it could be on the ABAP stack, it could be on the HANA stack. The Enterprise Rule Model is based on the Decision Model and Notation 1.1 and consists of 5 primary entities: projects, data objects, rule services, rules, and rule sets. What are these? So the project is basically a container for your business rules archive. Your project will be the thing that's versioned. It will be basically the bracket around everything else. Your data objects are used to have a common vocabulary within your project. So you are able to define structures, tables, and elements in there, which can then later be used as the inputs or outputs for different rules or rule services. Your rule service is the interface to the outside. So your rule service is what will be invoked by your other applications. You'll define the inputs in there, you'll define the outputs in there. So basically, you know afterwards what you need to submit in order to get your result. The rule service is referenced by rule sets. And the rule sets are brackets around different rules. So once you're invocating a rule service, the rules of the different rule sets will be invoked. And the rule themselves, they contain your decision logic. They can be either text rules, so simple statements, if, else, then, or decision tables, so multiple statements that can result in multiple outcomes. Let's take a look into the business rule creation process. In order to create your business rules, you need to first create a project. As I said, the project is basically the container for all the other entities. Afterwards, you'll model your data objects. The data objects are used to describe the data structures that are utilized in your rules. Then you model the rule services. So you add rule services to the project to define the interfaces to the outside world. Afterwards, you model your rules. So you add the business logic to your project. Then you define the rule sets, which is linking the business logic to the interfaces to the outside. And afterwards, you're releasing your project and deploying the rule services. As I said in the beginning, you can do this in 2 different ways. You can either use the Managed Rule application, which is a software as a service application shipped by SAP, or you can use the Business Rules APIs that are published in the SAP API Business Hub. There are some benefits of doing it with the software as a service application. Primarily, it's a quicker or faster time to value. So let's for now stick with the Managed Rule application. We can, if there is some interest, add some bonus lectures in the end for the API Business Hub authoring process. Speaking about the release process of SAP Cloud Platform Business Rules, we should quickly speak about the version management concept. SAP Cloud Platform Business Rules is shipped with a full-fledged change management concept containing a change history. This concept is built up in a way that you can freeze development on a production rule, you could patch it, and you can really decide which kind of rules you are invoking. So let's take a look into it. There are two different concepts that you can use during the release process. You can or you must change the version, and you can change the revision. The version is really a unit of change. So it's following the semantic versioning format, which means you've got a major version, minor version, and a patch number. The major version is usually a breaking version. Once you've released a version, you can't change it. So if you're releasing a new version, it needs to have a different number. There is one limitation with SAP Cloud Platform Business Rules. You're just allowed to have 10 versions available at the same time. So once you are above the 10 version, or once you've reached the 10 versions, you would need to delete an old version. The versioning is just supported at business rules project level. So you can't version a specific data object or a specific rule service. You can just version the whole project itself. The versioning is rather a technical aspect. The revision is rather business centric. So if you're looking at the right side, the versions are rather technical. So it's just counting up from the 0.0.1 up to the 3.0.1 on the right side. All these different changes have, if you're seeing here from 2019 to 2020, they seem to have a kind of breaking change in between. So you're counting up one major number. And then there was in 2020 a small patch. So something was wrong and was fixed in this version. Now, what is the sense of doing this kind of revision version style? If you are invoking the rule service from, for example, SAP Cloud Platform workflow, you can decide if you want to invoke a specific revision or if you want to invoke a specific version. Now, if you're looking at the upper example of the SLA 2018, you would call the version 1.2.0. Why is that? You specify that you want to have a specific revision. You didn't specify any specific version. So it will take the highest semantic version of the revision. Contrary to that, you can see in the bottom example that you can also call specific versions. In this case, it would call a version 1.0.1, which is not displayed on the right side, but you would just need to imagine that it's there. Right, so now let's dive into the practical example. I'll start this practical example with a blank trial account so that you can better follow and understand what I'm doing here. I'll choose Europe Frankfurt as it's nearer to me, and I'll create my trial account. Okay, with the trial account created, let's get started. We'll first enter our trial account. Okay, we can close this information that the trial account is now available for 365 days instead of 90 days. And we'll see our trial account being established. So we've already got a sub account. We've got a space as well. But what we want to use is something on the left side called a booster. These boosters are a little bit different between an enterprise account and a trial account. So currently, if you would be looking for this booster that we'll use on an enterprise account, you won't find it. So it's just available in trial. So there is one called Setup Account for Workflow Management. As I've explained before, SAP Cloud Platform Business Rules belongs to the Workflow Management Service. So let's just click this one. You'll see an overview, some additional information, and we'll just hit the Start button on the upper right corner. Now it's starting the booster. What will happen in the background? So if it's loaded, you'll see what's happening. It's assigning the service quotas. So basically, it's giving you the right entitlements to use the services. It's subscribing to the software as a service application of SAP Cloud Platform Workflow Management, which we'll use to access the interface. Afterwards, it will create service instances for the SAP Cloud Platform Workflow Management, for SAP Cloud Platform Workflow, for process visibility, and for business rules. In this course, we're just interested in the business rules, but nevertheless, you've got everything running afterwards. It will create the destinations that are necessary between these services. So we might not use them for the business rules service, but for example, for the workflow service or for workflow management, if you want to import live process content, the destinations would already be in place. And it's assigning the role collection, so the necessary rights to use the services to the user which is executing this booster. So simply said, it's just saving us time setting up the environment. If you're interested into what's really happening behind the scenes, then drop me a message and I will explain it in more details. Otherwise, we'll see each other once it's created. All right, so the booster has been executed and I missed to leave the screen open, so sorry about that. What you should have seen after the execution was finished is a screen which allows you to navigate to the SAP account or to the workflow management software as a service application immediately. What I will do instead is to navigate there on my own, so you can also follow along. On the top there is the breadcrumb navigation, and I will navigate to my global account. Then on the left side I will take the SAP accounts. I'll switch to my trial SAP account, and in here you'll now see that there are 2 active subscriptions. There are 4 active service instances. If you're taking a look into the service instances, now I've been navigated into the space, so it's in the Cloud Foundry environment. There are now services running for business rules, process visibility, workflow, and workflow management. For business rules, there has already been a service key created, which is used by the workflow management, if I'm not mistaken. We will use this service key later on to call the APIs from the SAP API Business Hub, but let's go to that later on. All right, so let's navigate back to the SAP account. In the SAP account, you'll find subscriptions. Subscriptions are basically software as a service applications delivered by SAP. There is one subscription in here called Workflow Management. Click on Go to Application and it should open in a new browser tab. Now you'll see a lot of tiles in here. I'll try to sort them down and then we'll jump to the correct one for the business rules. So on the top you're seeing My Inbox and you're seeing the monitor workflows. There are 2 of them for the instances and for the definitions. These 3 tiles belong to the workflow service. Then you've got the flexibility cockpit as well as the managed packages, which is belonging to that area of live processes or process flexibility. Then you've got process workspace, configure visibility scenarios, monitor visibility scenarios, and event acquisition. All of that is belonging to the process visibility area. Then you've got the last one, which is manage rule projects. This is the one interesting for us for the business rule service. Now, why are we using this software as a service application? Until a few months ago, in order to access these tiles, you would have needed to create your own Fiori Launchpad project and include them. And in order to do so in your company Launchpad, it's still the same process. So it's just a simplification for us developers to produce the first results. Now let's click on the Manage Rule projects. We'll see that we are in the area of SAP Cloud Platform Business Rules. There are 2 tabs on the left side, Design and Configure Systems. Let's take a look at Configure Systems first. Configure Systems is used to configure the different environments you want to deploy your business rules to. So if you're clicking on the plus icon, you'll see that there are some predefined context paths. These are for the ABAP system, so for an S/4HANA system or an S/4HANA cloud system, and HANA, which is for an SAP HANA system. So these are the 2, if you remember back the ecosystem or the environment slide, these are the 2 direct deployment options. If you would need, or if you would want to deploy to such a system, you would configure a destination in the SAP Cloud Platform the context path would be automatically appended to the destination, and you would be able to deploy this way. As we are just deploying to the SAP Cloud Platform, we don't need to configure a system. So let's jump back. This design area is where we are managing all our business rule projects and their different artifacts. As we currently don't have a project, let's create a new one. So click on the Add button on the upper right corner. Now we need to give our service a name. Let's, for example, take Incident SLA. So we'll model a service that will give us the due date for a specific incident based on an SLA. Project to determine the incident due date based on SLAs. Now you've got a system down here. System would be if you, for example, configured another SAP system, so an S/4HANA ABAP system or a HANA system itself, you could choose the different systems down here. Now in this case, let's stick with SAP Cloud Platform. There are two different expression languages that you can choose. The first one is the rule expression language. The rule expression language is really simple for business users. So if you would, for example, want to access the creation timestamp of an incident, you would really phrase it in a way, creation timestamp of the incident. While on the DMN-S field, it's based on the decision model and notation, and then it's friendly enough expression language. It's always with a point in between. So it would be incident.creation timestamp. Now we've got included projects down here. Included projects allow you to consume, for example, vocabulary from another project. We won't take a look into this area in this course. If you'd be interested into it, just leave me a message and I will maybe add a bonus chapter for it. Now the exposed vocabulary on the other side is for these included projects. So if you would include this project into another project, the exposed vocabulary would be available to that other project. Okay, now we've got 4 different buttons up here. We've got save, validate, activate, and cancel. I think cancel is speaking for itself. Save is also just saving it, but not doing some kind of checks if it's valid or not. Validation is really just checking the validation, and activate is saving, validating, and activating it. So usually you would always want to use activate. So let's click that one, and we've activated our project. Now the first step, if you remember, after creating a project is to model your data objects. So let's go into the data objects. Now you've got included data objects. That would be the case if you had included another project and this other project would have exposed data objects. In our case, we will use local data objects. Now we are going to model the data objects manually. There are also other possibilities. So you can, for example, load a CDS into the business rules service so that you've automatically created the data object out of it. This would be possible via the import button. We'll just choose the add button on the right side here. Now, if we're thinking about our scenario that we want to give in an incident and we want to get out a due date, then we'll need some different data objects. One of the data objects is the due date. Let's start with that one. So it's the due date of the incident. On the right side, we've got different types. In this case, currently the type is a structure, but we want to have it as an element. Now, the element can have different business data types. In this case, it would be a timestamp. There is one more possibility on the upper side here, which is a label. A label allows you to globalize your business rule project. So if you're now putting in due date as an example, Afterwards, we can download the business rule project and we can translate the different labels to different languages. All right, let's stick with that one for the beginning and activate that one. Now use the breadcrumb navigation to get back into the data object area, and we'll create a second data object. The data object here will be called SLA with the label of service level agreement and a description of SLA duration in days. Now we'll change this data object also to an element, and we'll use a number in this case. And let's activate this data object as well. Last but not least, we'll need to add the incident itself. The incident is a structure. So you've got the incident as a node, and there are multiple elements below that node. If you've wondered what this extensible button means, it's used if you're exposing this object into a different or to a different project, you could extend it. So it's meant for this kind of extensibility possibilities. Now our incident needs multiple attributes. So we talked about a creation timestamp, which creation timestamp of the incident creation, and as a business data type, we'll use a timestamp again. Now, as a second input that we want to have, it's a category of the incident. So what do I mean with category? It could be, for example, an IT incident. It could be a facility incident. It could be a car fleet incident. This one will be a string. Now, last but not least, we'll want to have a priority. Priority and the priority of the incident. This one is a string as well. And now what we can do in here is we can define value helps. These value helps will be used when you're creating a rule later on. So let's dive into the priority as an example. In the priority, you're seeing value help and annotations. Annotations are only used if you're deploying to another system than an SAP Cloud Platform system. So if you want to enable business users to use consistent vocabulary, you can create a value help. So let's click plus on the right side. You've got two possibilities for value helps. Either a value list, which is what we are going to create, or service URL mapping. A service URL mapping would enable you to call another service and get back a list of valid inputs. So we'll use a value list in this case. We are manually defining the possible inputs. Now, let's give them some descriptions and some values. So low priority. Then we've got medium priority. We've got high priority. And we've got, last but not least, very high priority. Let's save this and let's get back to the incident. Also, the category could benefit from having a value help. So let's create some value helps for the category as well. So click on the category, click on the plus on the value help, click on value list, and let's create some entries. It could be, for example, IT with the description, information technology related incident. It could be, for example, facility for facility management related incident. And let's just take a third category. Let's take car fleet and let's say car fleet related incident. All right, let's save these three. Now let's get back to the incident. Let's edit it and let's activate the incident again. Okay, so what did we do that far? We defined 3 different data objects. These data objects can be used in our different rules and our rule service. We defined 2 of them as an element, so as a single input, single output data object. We defined the incident as a structure. This structure has elements below it. In the elements below, we created value helps for the category and the priority, so that our business users can really simply model their rules. Next, we are going to model the rule service. The rule service is the interface to the outside world. In order to model the rule service, let's click on the plus icon on the upper right corner. Let's name it determine incident due date. Let's give it a label of determination of the incident due date. For the description, let's use determination of the incident due date based on an incident. Now you're seeing the vocabulary area down here. Let's click a plus. The vocabulary is basically used to define our input and output values. So we've got an incident as our input. And we've got the due date as our result. All right, let's activate the rule service. Next, we'll model our rules. So let's go one step back. Let's switch to the Rules tab. And let's start modeling our rules. The first one that we'll use is determine SLA agreement. Our determine SLA agreement will be a decision table. So we've got multiple values that we can have as an input and multiple different outputs. Now we are starting in this screen. First, let's give it a label again. Determine SLA agreement. Description will be determination of the SLA agreement based on the incident information. In order to model your decision table, you need to click onto that gear wheel down here. Now we've got 2 different hit policies, first match and all match. First match is giving you back the first found matching entry, while all match is giving you back all matching entries. So the return structure for all match needs to be a table. For first match, it's a structure. Let's use the first match as we just want to have the SLA that's fitting. Now as a condition, now here press Control space. We want to use the incident. And from the incident, we want to use the category. We don't want to use a fixed operator. You can define here that it's a fixed operator which can't be changed later on. And then as a second input, we want to have the incident priority. So we want to have the category and the priority as the inputs for our SLA in this case. Now we could give it a default value, but that's nothing we would do at the moment. Okay, so let's click apply. Now it's automatically creating the table for us. Now if you remember what we put in, we can use the comparison operators in this case. So to open this menu, it's again Control space. We could set it to equal. Now we can use the fixed value. And as we created the value help, we'll already see the pre-proposed values that we've created. So I can take car fleet. The incident priority, we can do it in the same way, control space, comparison operators equal, and we'll use the fixed value, and equal to, for example, low, should result in the service level agreement being, for example, 4 days. Now we've got our first business rule with currently just 2 value inputs. In order to speed it up, we can also import and export business rules. The business rules can be exported to Excel, which we'll do now. So you'll see that there is now a determine SLA agreement XLSX. I'll just click that one and let it open. You'll see that we've got underlying information on the top headers, which is the project ID and the rule ID of the service that we just created, or the rule that we just created. Now what we can do in here is we can model the business rule just in Excel. So if we're just taking these ones down here, let's just take medium and let's take high, and let's take very high. Now in here we are not benefiting from the value helps that we've created beforehand, but it could be that your business users prefer using Excel, so you can allow them to work in the tool they like. Now we are just giving back different values. For the medium priority, let's just take always 1 day down, which would be 3, 2, 1, and 1, 0. And let's always take the example of the car fleet. All right, let's save that one for the time being. Now let's import it by clicking the import button on the top. We will be asked to browse to the file. Let's do that for a second. And after we've searched for the file, we can just click it and upload it. So let's enter it, click import, and we've got our table built up. So currently what would happen if we would have an incident of car fleet with the priority of low? The service level agreement would be 4 days. If we've got an incident of no specific category with the priority of low, it would be 3 days. And that would repeat to the bottom until we've got 0 days of service level agreement, which would mean it's created. Let's solve it directly. All right. So with the decision table being re-uploaded, we need to reactivate it again. So click on the edit button and click on activate. Now our SLA agreement is activated again. Let's go back to the main menu and let's create a text rule. In order to do that, click on the plus again. This time we will name it determine due date and we'll give it the type of text rule. Click on create. And now you'll see a little bit of a different UI. Let's give it a label again, determination of due date, determination of the incident due date based on the SLA and the creation timestamp, the incident. All right. In order to create the text rule, you'll want to click the gear wheel icon once again. Now, what is our result? The result in this case is the due date. We click on apply. Now we need to define our if statement. So let's say if our service level agreement is not equal, now fixed value 0, then we want to add the number of days in the SLA to the creation timestamp. So let's use control space, time and duration functions, more, and down here you'll see add days. Now we take our incident creation timestamp and we'll add a comma and use our service level agreement. So what is this doing? It's adding the number of days specified in the service level agreement to our incident creation timestamp. Now we can use the else block to catch the service level agreement, and we want to return the incident creation timestamp in this case. So if there is an SLA of 0 days, we just want to have it solved immediately. Now let's activate this one again. And return to the main menu via the breadcrumb navigation. We now defined the two rules that we need. We defined a rule to determine the due date, and we defined a rule to determine the SLA agreement. What do we need to do now? We need to model a rule set. So we need to model the container for these two rules. So let's navigate to the rule sets and click the plus icon here again. Let's simply call it determine due date rule set. Give it a label of determine due date rule set. Description of determination of the due date based on the incident creation timestamp and the SLA. Now there are two different policies. These policies are aggregation and orchestration. When you use the aggregation policy, all of the rules will be executed in the way you added them down here. So they will just execute one after another. If you want to orchestrate your rule execution, you want to use the orchestration policy. In the orchestration policy, you can really define which rule is run first, which is second, and which is last. So let's take orchestration down here. Now you've got the rule service. This is referring to the rule service part. We'll take our determination of the incident due date. Now we've got the priority. The priority is the order in which the rule sets would be executed. So you can have multiple rule sets referring to the service, and the priority would determine which rule set is run first, starting with the one with the lowest priority, so 0.001, I think. Now we want to include one data object. This data object is the service level agreement. Why are we doing it? Because we want to use service level agreement within our rule set. Now we'll add both our rules. So click on the add rule button down here, click insert first, and now click on the determination of the due date. Click once again onto add rule, insert first, and click on the determine SLA agreement. It's important that you're doing it in this order because the rules will be executed one after another. And as our determination of the due date is based on the SLA agreement that we are calculating beforehand, we need to orchestrate them in a way that first the determine SLA agreement is run and afterwards the determination of the due date is run. Let's activate this one. Last but not least, we need to deploy our rule service. So let's get back. Let's go to the rule service and let's deploy it. You'll see that the rule service is successfully deployed, and now we can start testing it. So let's move to the API Business Hub. Okay, so let's move to the API Business Hub. The API Business Hub is available at api.sap.com. First, check that you are logged in. You'll need to log in beforehand. Now, what we'll do is we'll search for business rules. And the first entry you'll find is SAP Cloud Platform Business Rules. There are currently multiple APIs available. Interesting for us now in this case is the Rule Execution API for Cloud Foundry, as we're deploying the Cloud Foundry environment. And we'll use the version 2. The Rule Authoring API, which is found on the left side, is used to really model the business rules from another system, for example, by implementing the UI5 control. So let's start with the Execution API. What you want to do first is to configure a system. So let's click onto this cogwheel right here. Now we'll be asked for multiple datas. I'll just use the display name course, and all of these variables, we can find them in the SAP Cloud Platform. So let's jump back to the SAP Cloud Platform for a second. The last time we were on the SAP Cloud Platform, we navigated from the subscriptions to the SAP Cloud Platform Workflow Management application. Now what we need to do is we need to find the service key of the business process instance. So let's click on the service instances. And let's click on the business rules instance. On the right side, you'll see the service key. What I'm doing now shouldn't be done in an enterprise account or somewhere where you have really sensible information. I'll open the service key, which allows also you to connect to the service instance if I haven't deleted it by this time. So be careful if you're doing it in your account, you shouldn't really share that information. That being said, let's click onto Actions and click onto View. The first information that we were asked for is the runtime URL. It's found in the node of rule runtime URL. So let's take this part of the URL. Let's jump back to the API Business Hub and enter it. Now next, we are asked for the authentication. What we'll enter down here is the client ID, which is shown in this area, and the client secret, which is shown down here. For the token service URL, we'll take the URL down here. Once again, don't copy the HTTPS part, it's appended automatically. All right. Now we want to apply this environment to all APIs in this package, and we want to save it for future sessions. So let's save. In here in the APIs, we've got two different areas. We've got the deploy undeploy rule service area, and we've got the invoke rule service area. The XSRF tokens are relevant if you are, for example, doing it via Postman. In the API Business Hub, it's done automatically, so you don't need to care about it. Let's first check the ID of our rule service. There are two ways to do that. As we haven't released the version yet, everything we're doing is currently a working set. So let's take a look onto the working set rule definitions, and let's click on execute. Now we're seeing we've got the rule service ID, which is our rule service determine incident due date with the project name incident SLA. There is another way for us to find the rule service ID. If we are in the business rules application, you can also click the cogwheel on the right side and you can enable the ID to be shown. Now, if you're checking, it's starting with 414. And if we're going back, it's starting as well with 404, 414. So basically these two information are the same. It depends on how you like to get it. Now, if you want to test our rule service, we're clicking on Invoke Rule Service. Now, in order to test our current version of the business rule, we need to use the working set rule service. As we haven't released a version yet, everything we're doing below that working set. So let's click that post working set. Let's choose the API environment again, and let's try it out. Now you're seeing JSON payload, which is basically predefined. What we need to change is the vocabulary as well as the rule service ID. I already prepared it, which I'm just copying in. So basically we have taken the rule service ID and we've entered our incident, which is our input variable, our priority low, and the car fleet. Now, if we remember what we've done, it should be 4 more days. So 4 days after our creation timestamp. Now, if we are executing our service, we are getting back the 10th, which is 4 more days. Now, if we are not specifying a category, and if we're using the priority of very high, we should get back the same date. So let's execute it. And we're getting back the same date. So what we've done is having a really flexible way to react onto different input variables. We could now give the decision table back to the business and they could be responsible for it. In order to do that, we would take a few more steps. So let's jump back to our business rule. In the business rule service, let's enable the edit mode again. We haven't yet released anything. So what we would do now is we would really release our version. So if you're looking into the project, it's currently inactive. So let's activate it. Now that it is active again, we can click on release version. Now our release version could be our first major version, 1.0.0, and a revision of SLA 2020. Description, service level agreements of 2020, major version 1. All right, so let's release that one. So what you'll see now is that in the upper left corner, there's now not draft anymore, but revised content. You can't change this revised content. It's fixed. So let's go back into our project overview. Now you still got one project in here. If you want to check your version 1.0.0, you would click onto this icon. You would click onto the history. And now you're able to see, okay, there is a version 1.0.0 on the revision SLA 2020 created on the 7th of November. If we're clicking into it, we are getting all the entries from that former version. And we can copy it to draft. Let's go back to the manage projects for the time being. And let's navigate into the draft version once again. So let's edit this draft version. Let's say we made a mistake. Instead of 0 days on a very high topic, we are really relaxed. Very high is for us just something nobody in business would use. Let's switch to the rules and let's change the SLA agreement. We'll edit this one, and just for the sake of a good example or a visible example, let's change this one to 100 days. All right. Now we need to activate the decision table again, and we need to activate the project again. With these two entities being activated, we can release a new version. Now we'll release version 1.0.1 of SLA 2020. Now we need to give a description again. Let's just use SLA 2020 patch 1. And let's release this version as well. Now what we can do is we can navigate back to the manage projects. We can click on the history of our project. And we'll see if we're navigating into it, and if we're navigating to the rule service and enter the cogwheel and enter, sorry for the many steps, the version and the revision, we'll see some more information. So we've got the version 1.1 of the SLA 2020 revision, and we've got the version 1.0 of the SLA revision. What we didn't do beforehand is we didn't deploy these versions. Just for the sake of showing what happens, I want to just use these information for a second. So let's navigate back to the API Business Hub. Now what we can do is we can use the rule service. We'll try it out. I'll just post it belowhand. I'll copy the rule service revision. And now what we can do is we can incorporate the rule service revision as well with SLA 2020. Now, if it would be the really newest version, we should have an unbelievably high date. So let's just execute it. And no service found. Why did that happen? In order to be able to use the different versions, we first need to deploy them. So let's go into the history again. Let's go into our version 1.1.0. Let's click on the rule service and let's deploy it. Now it should be deployed to the SAP Cloud Platform, and we can test it again in the API Business Hub. Instead of our not found, we should now expect to get back the same date. So let's execute it, and we're getting back the same date, which basically means currently the newest version deployed of the rule service revision SLA 2020 is the version 1.0.0, even though we've got a 1.0.1 released. Let's take a look into our 1.0.1. Be careful, it didn't update up here. It's still the 1.0.1. And we deploy this one to the SAP Cloud Platform. Then we would expect 100 days being added. So let's go to the Cloud Platform. Let's execute it. And we're getting back the 14th January of 2021. So now it's really taking the SLA 2020 version 1.0.1. So using this service revision, we'll always take the highest semantic version of the business rule, which is currently deployed. We could do it in another way as well. So if we really want to use the old version for specific reasons, we can click on a model. We can use the rule service version. Instead, we'll just paste it in. We'll go into the specific service and we'll take the now version 1.1 here. We'll just paste it in, executing it, and we'll get back our expected 100 days added. Now, we could also use the older version available. So if we're switching to the 0 and executing it, now we are back to our old version. And that's basically how this versioning concept is working within SAP Cloud Platform business rules. If you are seeing that you are getting close to the 10 versions, you can always delete versions that you have available at the moment. Hey there, we're coming to the end of the course. What did we do that far? First, we put SAP Cloud Platform business rules into the correct context. So you learned that SAP Cloud Platform business rules is available on the SAP Cloud Platform. It's part of the extension suite, and in there it's part of the digital process automation area. You got to know that the digital process automation area is responsible for all kinds of services around making processes more efficient, making them more flexible, and enabling business users. Within that digital process automation, we've learned that the workflow management service is really the umbrella for the Cloud Platform business rules. Now after that, we've taken a look into some of the theoretical concepts of the business rules. So you got to learn the enterprise rule model, you got to learn the different steps to create a business rule project, and you learned about the versioning concepts. Next, we've taken a look into the SAP Cloud Platform itself. So we've used a trial account to set up an environment to use the business rules. We've created a business rule project, we've released the business rule project, and we've tested it with the SAP API Business Hub. And now we're basically talking about what's next, what else is out there. So what we didn't talk about is the deployment into the different environments. We just deployed it to the SAP Cloud Platform. If you want to use it in the S/4HANA system or in a SAP HANA system, you would need to look into the documentation a little bit deeper. Also, we didn't take a look into the embedding of the business rule service into your own UI application. If that's something interesting for you, then please drop me a message and I will think about a scenario to integrate it. Also, we didn't take a look into geo rules. There are geo rules available which allow you to draw a polygon based on JSON information and to check if a JSON coordinate that you put in is within this polygon. An example for usage would be to determine the correct field service technician or company to serve a customer in a specific location. If something like this is interesting for you, if you missed something that you heard about and I didn't explain, or if you wished something to be explained in a more detailed way, then please drop me a message. I'm happy to expand the course depending on your needs. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed the course. I hope you learned something to help you with your start on the SAP Cloud Platform with SAP Cloud Platform Business Rules. Thank you.